immediate future, but it is really hot in Florida, even in September. Without electricity, there's no air conditioning, and that has now become a deadly problem. 8 residents at a nursing home near Miami died in the stifling heat. CNN's Miguel Marquez has more details.
A criminal investigation is now underway into the deaths of elderly residents at this Hollywood, Florida nursing home. They died after the facility faced power failures in the wake of Hurricane Irma.
They did have apparently a generator, but whatever was running by that generator, apparently the main air conditioning units for this facility that would take care of also the second floor apparently were out of commission.
So the electricity was on and the air conditioner was on when you left last night?
Yeah, not the current, not
from the generator.
Right.
The surviving residents of the rehabilitation center at Hollywood Hills have been evacuated to Memorial Regional Hospital, which is adjacent to the nursing home. Tonight, about a dozen of them are in critical condition. Dr. Randy Katz is head of the emergency care unit at Memorial. He says at least 50 of his employees ran to the nursing home after being called for help.
The scene was chaotic when I arrived. We had at least 115 patients that we were trying to evacuate and bring them to safety.
This woman's mother is a patient in the nursing home. Were you in there this week?
Yes, yesterday. I come every day.
You were here yesterday?
Yeah.
What was the temperature?
110 or more.
Millions of Floridians are still without power, and with temperatures in the 90s, the health risks significant. Across Florida, more than 30,000 federal employees are on the ground working with state and local officials. And while most of the state is dealing with downed trees and damaged buildings, in the Keys, the situation is more grave. Just in the last 24 hours, the Coast Guard has made more than 100 rescues.
It's a dire situation, but the good news is the resources are coming. We're getting food, we're getting water, we're reconstituting the port of Key West, but it's going to take a little time.
8 people are dead, another 12 in critical condition. The death toll could rise. The state has shut down the rehabilitation center here, and that criminal investigation is continuing. Miguel Marquez, CNN, Hollywood, Florida.
Well, with a criminal investigation into those deaths now underway, the facility in question and its owners could face serious legal jeopardy. Joining us with her expertise is CNN legal analyst Ariva Martin. Ariva, always good to have you with us. So let's break this down. So sweltering heat, frail and elderly patients, and then we hear death apparently due to that heat.
Yeah.
So death which could have been avoided, and begs the question, does this meet the legal definition of negligence?
I think what's so disturbing about this story is that this nursing home has a history of violations under Florida law for not having in place that which is required to care for this very vulnerable population. And now we're learning that on Sunday, apparently, their air conditioning unit went out, and we don't know what happened between Sunday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
What we do know is that those individuals were not removed from that facility, were not taken to that hospital, which was like
so
feet,
close, yes.
you know, just feet, not less than a mile away from that rehabilitation center. And why wasn't that done?
Yeah.
Why weren't there precautions in place? We should expect the nursing home to say that this was an act of God, that this was a natural disaster, that they had no control over the loss of power, but I'm not sure that argument is going to resonate.
All right, to that part, let's read some of the statement put out by the center, the Rehabilitation Center at Hollywood Hills. Let's put it up on our screens for our viewers to follow along. While our center did not lose power during the storm, it did lose one transformer that powers the air conditioning unit. The center immediately contacted Florida Power and Light and continues to follow up with them for status updates on when repairs would be made. Outreach was also made to local emergency officials and first responders. In compliance with state regulations, the center did have a generator on standby in the event it would be needed to power life safety systems. The center also had 7 days of food, water, ice, and other supplies, including gas for the generator. But let us be clear, state and federal regulations require nursing home residents to be evacuated if it gets too hot inside. slide. Let's put up actually what the regulations look like so people can see clearly what it says there in Florida. Nursing homes are required to keep temperatures between 71 and 81 degrees. This is according to the Florida Agency for Healthcare Administration. That rule, Ariva, applies to nursing homes certified for the first time after October 1990, but facilities certified even before that time still must maintain safe and comfortable temperature levels. So, I mean, when you see this statement and we know the guidance, I mean, you think it sounds like they're trying to shift
finger pointing. They're saying we made a call to the Department of Water and Power. We made repeated calls. Those calls went unanswered. But again, that begs the question. You're in the business of caring for vulnerable populations. What backup systems do you have in place? And even though this is a natural disaster, we had government officials coming out days in advance after Hurricane Harvey talking about Irma and talking about the damage it was going to do in Florida and warning people, residents throughout Florida, to evacuate, to take precautionary measures. And we don't have any evidence to date that this rehabilitation center heeded those warnings and took those measures.
Well, the statement does mention Florida Power and Light. So I must ask you, just so you can clear up for us, do they have any liability here? Bearing in mind the nursing home says they reached out to them multiple times.
You know, we're going to see if this, we should expect to have wrongful death lawsuits filed, civil lawsuits filed concurrent with this criminal investigation that's happening, and those facts will come out. Were those calls actually placed? What happened at the utilities company with respect to any of those calls? But I don't think they can shift the blame to the utilities company and say, we made a phone call and nothing was done. Again, they have the ultimate responsibility to care for this vulnerable population. What systems did they have in place, particularly given their history? That's going to be a big question and a big issue in lawsuits that will be filed by the family members of these deceased elderly people.
You know, it seems as if Wednesday was spent more, you know, was a considerable amount of time on Wednesday was spent just shifting the blame.
Yes.
So we talked about the center and what they're saying. They, you know, they're now pushing it to Florida Power and Light, and Florida Power and Light, well, now they're shifting it to the state.
Yes.
So this is what they're saying. According to the New York Times, Rob Gould, who's a spokesman for the power company, said at a news conference on Wednesday that when the company met in March with Broward County officials to discuss hurricane preparations, the officials had not flagged the nursing home as a top-tier critical infrastructure that would need power first. So they're basically saying, well, when they were doing the preparations, they never said this was a critical facility. So it's not our fault we didn't respond immediately.
And sadly, in cases like this, you see this happen. You see all of the entities that potentially have liability pointing the finger at each other. And again, when civil lawsuits are filed, when the discovery process begins, we'll get more of the facts. And ultimately, if these cases go to trial, a trier of fact, jurors will have to decide who is ultimately responsible. But I can't help but get back to that nursing facility. Because again, if you take your loved one to a nursing facility, your understanding, your belief, your reasonable expectation is that they will take all the necessary precautions to prevent your loved one from being subjected to, you know, these ungodly temperatures. And we know that when city officials went into that nursing home and found those dead bodies, they said it was incredibly hot in that facility. And someone's going to have to answer for that. Why was it hot? Why weren't there more precautions taken? Why weren't there cooling units in place? And why weren't these elderly people protected? That's going to be the ultimate question. So sad.
Ariva, we appreciate it. Thank you. Our hearts, obviously, our hearts and prayers go out to the families affected
very sad
in this situation.